Hello and welcome to the Faith and Firearms Project. My name is Michael Chan. At the Faith and Firearms Project, we study the intersection of guns and religion in America. And to that end, today we have the opportunity to hear from a retired Presbyterian minister and missionary, James Atwood. James has been working on questions of gun violence for about 40 years. He is himself a gun owner and a hunter. But before we get into the details of James' life, which I'll let him fill you in on, I want to turn for a moment to some digital resources, and in particular I want to draw your attention to the book that he has written, titled America and its Guns, and that will be really the focus. The arguments he makes there will be the focus of our conversation today. So let's turn to the internet and we'll look at some resources and some websites where you can find more information about James Atwood.
The screen that you're looking at right now is, of course, Amazon.com, but on it you'll see the cover of Jim's book, America and Its Guns, a Theological Expose, published in June of 2012 by Wipf and Stock, a theological publishing house. And there's a bit of a summary right here. If you want to, you can preview just a little bit of the book, but not too much of it. You can see the table of contents, which is helpful, and then can go to a couple of those links if you just want to kind of peruse the book. Additionally, you can purchase the book through Kindle or as a used or new paperback, actually for pretty good prices. So. However, if you are unable to gain access to this book, I would point you in the direction of the web, where Jim has published a little bit of his work online. In this case, you're looking at an article titled 9mm Golden Calves, and I think if you were to read this article, you would at least begin to see some of the argument that Jim is trying to make in this article. And the journal in which this is published, the forum, is Sojourners: Faith and Action for Social Justice. If you're interested in that group, check out the About Us page. Jim's work, this particular article, in fact, is also featured on a website by Fuller Theological Seminary, and Fuller has put together this website titled Resources for Responding to Gun Violence. And this is these are the Fuller professors who have put this together. Quite a wide range of professors, in fact, everything from a professor of Near Eastern Studies and Biblical Studies as well, to professors of preaching and leadership, ethics and theology and culture. So these 6 professors represent quite a few disciplines within the world of theology. And what they do is this little website is broken up into 4 subsections. Why should Fuller be involved? And then this is exactly where James' article is featured. Here you see the same one again, 9mm Golden Calves in Sojourner. So why should Fuller be involved? What can we do? And here, this section actually begins with a co-signed letter from Richard Mao, who is the former president at Fuller, and then a number of other ways in which people can be involved in responding to gun violence. And then thirdly, data and resources on gun violence and risks. So this is kind of a data-driven section. And then finally, theological reflections. I think Jim's article probably also fits into this category as well. Well, let's turn now to the interview with James Atwood. I want to encourage everyone to respond to all the videos. My only request is this, and I'll do a separate video on this as well, but I would simply want to say, if you're going to respond, either in the comments of the video or in an email to me, I'd like to request a couple things. First of all, keep your comments civil and respectful. The only way this conversation about guns in America is going to move forward or make progress at all is if we can engage in civil discourse. So be respectful in your comments, be respectful in your emails. I think critique is welcome across this entire project. For anything that's published here, you should feel free to critique it. I only ask that again, that you be respectful, but then also that you show evidence for your views, that you're willing to document your opinions and why they are there. You don't have to, necessarily cite particular scripture verses or anything like that. Cite sources that are significant to your own faith, or that are significant to the argument that you're making. I think those kinds of things are important for keeping the discourse civil, and also grounded in sources that have some weight and some gravity. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the interview. If you think of other people whom you think I should interview, some names, send those to me. Other conferences, events, books that you think I should be looking at, make sure you contact me. faithandfirearms007@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the interview.
Here.
Okay, all set. So you just let me know when you're ready and we'll begin.
I'm ready right now.
Okay. This interview is with Pastor Emeritus James Atwood, who is the author of America and Its Guns, a Theological Expose. And Jim, you were Pastor Emeritus of Trinity Presbyterian Church in Arlington. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In Arlington, Virginia. And you are involved in an organization called Heeding God's Call, which I understand is a faith-based ecumenical movement, and you're encouraging, as I understand it, gun shops to adopt certain policies that would deter illegal purchasing. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm also on the board of the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence.
Tell me a little bit about that.
For 40 years.
Did you found that organization?
No, I didn't. I got into the organization 1 year after they had been founded by the Methodist Church and the Presbyterian Church.
Oh, I see. You have been working on gun violence though for some decades. Is that right?
I've been working on gun violence ever since 1975, when one of my members was shot by a teenage boy who went to the local bowling alley to complain to his friend that he didn't have any money. And his friend reached in his pocket and pulled out a Saturday night special and said to him, "Go get yourself some money." And when you gave him a gun and said, "When you get some money, give me $20 and you can keep the gun." And he went out and killed one of the charter members of my church. And the next day I drove down to the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence and volunteered my time.
I see. Okay, so it was this personal disaster or tragedy within your congregation that prompted you to get involved.
Right.
Yeah. I gave a little bit of a bio of events or things that you've been involved in over the years. Would you just tell us a little bit about who you are from maybe a broader angle, how long you've been in ministry, maybe even a bit about your own history with guns?
Okay. I am a Presbyterian minister, retired. I went to my first charge in Wallace, North Carolina.
Is this PCUSA, Presbyterian Church USA?
At that time, it was PCUS. And we became PCUSA in 1983 when our two churches, North and South, decided to be one again, since it was time after the Civil War to come together.
Yeah.
But I've been a pastor of the church in Wallace, North Carolina. After that, my wife and I spent 9 years in Japan as missionaries, and we returned to the States in 1974. Actually, it was in I'll go back here. And in 1958, I bought my first gun, which was a shotgun, from a Sears Roebuck mail order. And I like to hunt and have been hunting since that time. When we went to Japan, one of my good friends who lived there told me that they had good duck and pheasant hunting in Japan. Be sure and bring my shotgun. So I brought it, and as we arrived in Yokohama, the customs agent looked at my form that I filled out on arriving, and was troubled. He said, "You have a gun there?" I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, we don't allow unlicensed guns in the country, so your gun will have to be taken by the Yokohama police." And then they will tell you, they will send it on down to Kobe, where you're going to be living for 2 years. And they'll tell you how you can get your gun back. So the police took the gun out of my shipment, and then in I guess it was a month or so, I got a call from the Kobe police asking if they could come to the house, and I said certainly, and they came and asked me to identify the gun and to open and close it. They wanted to be sure I knew how to operate it. And then they said, now to get your gun back, you have to do 3 things. You have to get a statement from a doctor that you are mentally and physically able to handle this gun. And then you have to take a hunting safety course and pass it. And then you have to buy 2 licenses. And so after you've done all that, you bring those documents to the Kobe Police Department, and we'll give you your gun back. So I did that. Took me a little while, naturally, to do all that. And I was a little ticked off that I had to jump through all those bureaucratic hoops. But then I began to notice there weren't any articles in the English language paper about people who had been killed by guns. And actually, they just didn't have them. I was, so I cooled down a little bit and realized it might be a good reason to have these things, because back home in my own country, they were dying pretty regularly with gun accidents and a lot of murders in our cities, etc. But there were none of those in Japan. Well, there were just a few in Japan. You can count on one hand. And the very year I left Japan, the previous year, 1973, I lived in Tokyo, which was then the biggest city in the world. And they had 1 death by guns. One death. And then I moved to the United States. And I was conscious of the fact that 35,000 people were killed that year by guns in the United States, and that's quite a difference,
Right.
And so I was interested in that. And then when this tragedy happened, it sort of galvanized my feelings that this was something crazy going on, that we didn't regulate such lethal instruments. But I did continue to hunt, and actually only last year did I get rid of my guns, because I was just on the verge of turning 80. And I was not as stable on my feet as I used to be. And I didn't want to be carrying a loaded gun out in the woods where I wasn't steady on my feet. So I sold them to someone and insisted that they have a background check on themselves before I sold them a gun, and they did, and so I no longer have a gun in my possession. Mm-hmm. But I really did enjoy hunting for a number of years.
Yeah, but you are, I think as you say this in the book, you're clearly not opposed to gun ownership. Do I understand you correctly?
Absolutely, yeah. And oftentimes people who ask any question at all about the place of guns in our society are called by what I call gun zealots, gun grabbers. I'm not a gun grabber because and our church is none of the major churches or the major gun violence prevention groups. They do not rail against gun ownership. What we are concerned about is gun safety and preventing gun violence. And there are ways that can happen. And the tragic numbers of deaths that we experience in America are totally unnecessary. Some people will claim a constitutional right to have guns, and I, as a hunter, I supported that and do support it. But I think I also have a constitutional right to live in safety, free of gun violence, and I have a constitutional right to enjoy domestic tranquility, which is in the first paragraph of the Constitution of the United States. So it's a constitutional issue for me as well.
Yeah. And you, so we're talking right now we're talking about our national documents, so we're kind of moving into the realm of politics. But what's interesting about your book is that you actually, as I read it, you seem frustrated and are not convinced that the political process for people of faith is the best way to approach this issue. You seem to provide an alternative direction for dealing with gun violence. Maybe you can talk a bit about that.
Well, I've spent many hours trying to advocate for a sensible position for guns with my legislators, and I'm not totally dismissing that. And I go down every year to Richmond to deal with my state legislators on Martin Luther King Anniversary Day. And I write an awful lot of letters to my senators and congressmen. But while we're a country of laws, and we need to have gun laws are terribly important. The reason why I think that we are having so much trouble is that the faith community has just clammed up and letting the gun empire and the NRA have all the best lines, and the faith community has been very timid in addressing this tremendous national health issue that we have got to start making a moral case for the issue. I mean, I see gun violence not as a political issue.
Mm-hmm.
I see it as the greatest moral, ethical, spiritual problem in America.
Wow.
And yes, there are political implications to these gun laws and political implications to what the faith community says or should be saying, but we that the issue itself is not political. It's more moral, ethical, and spiritual to me than anything else.
You use the language of idolatry in your book.
Yeah. I see the issue as no more political than arson is a political problem, or drunk driving is a political problem.
Mm-hmm.
It is first a moral, ethical, spiritual issue. And when the faith community can convince our politicians of this, then the gun violence will abate. I do see it. What was your last question?
Oh, no, that's no problem at all. I'm trying to remember what my last question was. It had to do
as a moral issue.
Well, it had to do with your frustration with the political process and your decision, you enjoin your readers to take a spiritual approach to it. Right.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's crucial for the church. But we are in a situation where it's a subtle thing, but yet it's a very powerful thing when so many people, when a clergy person or a person of faith makes it an issue, they say, "What are you doing, making this a political issue here?" You know, I think I have three instances in the book where I show how the gun zealots have said, you know, that you should not raise this political issue in the church because we're a spiritual community.
Oh, I see.
And you know, I think that's a total abdication of our responsibility to buy into that argument.
Hey, let me ask one question. You make a distinction between kind of the gun zealots, you've called them here, but I think you also refer to the gun empire. So you make a distinction between gun zealots or gun empire and then gun owners. And I see this happening in a few places in the book, but then at the very end of the book, you also address, I think what you say, most members of the NRA. Talk to me about this distinction. What's the difference between a gun zealot or the gun empire and then just kind of regular gun owners? Why are you drawing those lines?
I think that I couldn't have hunted for 50 years without loving to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
To go out when it's cold or rainy or snowy or whatever, wind blowing, cold. I couldn't have gone out into the woods unless I really liked that, unless I loved to do that. And I did that for quite some time. But I did that as a gun owner. I did not do that as a gun zealot. And I make the distinction between a person who is a gun zealot, in my mind, is one whose gun has become an absolute, which means that that you can't ask questions about the Second Amendment, or you can't you can't place restrictions or regulations on these instruments. That is against the Second Amendment, which is a bogus reading of the Second Amendment. But the more germane point to me is that we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the word is all our mind and strength. And that would preclude our loving a gun in the same way and saying a gun is also an absolute like Almighty God is. I think this is where we run into problems, and gun owners are, I think, some gun owners are guilty of idolatry by placing their firearms on the same level as they do God himself.
And this is what you mean by making it into an absolute, a competing absolute. Yeah. It's a competing absolute. If we love the Lord with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, all our strength, we're going to adopt God's way of dealing with things. Yeah. If we have another thing or person which also has absolute claim on us, that's idolatry. I see.
That's my distinction on that. And when I talk about the gun empire, this is a huge conglomerate, you know? I mean, not only are the gun manufacturers involved in this, we are dealing with a well-funded, really an empire. It's a system. It's just a total a total way of looking at life. The gun empire is made up not only of your manufacturers and your distributors and your dealers. It's made up also of hunt clubs. Oh. Made up of industries of clothing and shoes and accessories that run from all kinds of gadgets to silencers to enlarged magazines to lights on the end of a assault rifle to the shooting contests that they have, and it's a way that people join in and into something that they think is bigger than themselves. Mm-hmm. And they can, it's sort of like a fellowship group because the NRA has you can always find friends at the shooting range, or you can take shooting vacations, and you can go here and there on cruises. The people that are in gun violence prevention don't go on any cruises together. I wish we did, but I'd buy the first ticket. But it's just a huge industry that is not only dealing with guns, but it spreads out into how we are to live as citizens. For example, I'll give you an example or two. Okay. Where recently the NRA said that the new doctor, what do they call it, medical physician, what's the name of that term?
The political position, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. The
medical examiner or something like this?
The doctor. Gosh, I've forgotten what that is. Excuse me for that elderly moment there. But it's the physician, chief physician of the United States.
Yeah.
And they said that this person had called the gun violence a mental health issue, a health issue for the United States.
Was it mental health or just health?
He said health.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on what you were saying.
Yeah, that it was a huge a huge health issue.
Yeah. Okay.
And they said that a guy like that should not be in charge of America's medical responsibilities. And when the doctors in Florida started saying that physicians should ask their patients who have some mental health issues, they should ask, the doctors should be asking if they have a gun in the house, because that's a sure place where a depressed person would go.
Okay.
And then the NRA said, we don't need that kind of person or that kind of doctor, and that's not what doctors are for. They're seeing it, you see, not as a health issue, but as a gun right issue. And so, they'll take on anything that they possibly can to disrupt any sensible law in this country.
And to return to the part where you address what you say most members of the NRA, what are you trying to communicate to most members, and who are the minority members, I guess, that you're talking about there?
Well, the most members, if we look at national polls, there is, I mentioned the guy in the book, Frank Luntz, Luntz, who is a Republican pollster, and he did two recent pollings on gun owners, and including NRA members, as to what they believed about guns, and he, a Republican, shared his poll, which reveals that the vast majority of gun owners favor background checks on all guns sold. They favor reporting to the police if one's gun is stolen. They favor, keeping guns out of the hands of terrorists and things. All of these things that we are espousing, the majority of gun owners support us in the movement to prevent gun violence. They support us, but this is in contradiction to the message of the NRA, where they will say that their gun owners support, no new laws on guns, just enforce the ones we have. That's their rhetoric.
Yeah.
But take a look at that poll. Do you have that poll?
I do have access to it. Yeah, I actually have. Since I have your book, I know where that reference is. To Lunz's.
That's a significant poll, and for the life of me, I do not understand how people can keep on supporting that organization, which is so full of just absurd stances, and they have not supported anything in preventing gun deaths or increasing the safety of guns. They've not supported one blooming thing.
Yeah, sorry, let me interject really quickly, Jim. The most recent, so we're in February, right? Yeah. So the most recent edition of the NRA's publication, I think the National Rifleman, I think that's the one. They have a couple different ones. They talk as the NRA talks, as it often does, about background checks and the danger of background checks. And the other argument that's brought forward is that background checks results in registry, which results in seizure. How do you respond to that?
That's nonsense. I don't see it. Hello?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jim. Yeah. Sorry. I'm giving you space to talk.
I think it's absolute nonsense. And gun owners know this is paranoia of the first order that big government is going to take over, come and confiscate their guns, and knock down their guns, and forbid them having guns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's absolute nonsense. And most gun owners recognize that. But the NRA, you see, what are they in the business for? They want to sell more guns. And they scare the hell out of anybody who says, there's going to be a big government takeover, and the gun zealots buy into that stuff, and they go to the gun dealer and buy another gun. So they'll have 15 guns instead of 14. It's insane.
So, Jim, what do you think that people who are maybe the gun zealots, what do you think they misunderstand about what you're trying to say? Like, you do a lot of activism, right? So I imagine that you've had contact with these quote unquote gun zealots and have been involved in, I think, protests and a whole number of different social events to get your message out. What do you think people fundamentally misunderstand about what you're trying to do?
Well, I think for the first thing, that these guns have become for them idols.
They misunderstand that they don't see that they have become idols.
Oh, of course not. No, they are. I mean, let's look at what some of the leaders of the NRA have said. That you'd get a far better understanding of the NRA if you would approach us as you would one of the great religions of the world.
Yeah, you cite this. You cite this quotation in the book, I think, early on.
I do, and also Charlton Heston's crazy statement about, how this is the greatest thing that ever happened to people. That they have this common use of this wonderful instrument, this wonderful gun. So I think that's part of it, is the idolatry of the gun itself. And then following that, they truly believe that there is a conspiracy of big government to take away their gun. And that leads into the insurrectionist stance that the majority of these gun zealots buy into, that I thought my wife just came in. And
oh, that's all right.
Much needed thought here. They buy into this insurrectionist idea that we need guns to protect ourselves. I don't know if you recall in the book a fairly long passage of insurrection,
right?
Where two very prominent leaders in the hunting movement made a statement that real hunters shouldn't use assault weapons for their hunting. And they kicked them out of the NRA, kicked them off radio show, kicked them off took away all of their livelihood, really, because of a statement they made about that gun. And the guns, they say, and Mike Huckabee, who's running for president now, right, has said that the real purpose of the Second Amendment is to be able to stop tyranny of our government.
And he's not the only one. I mean, this is actually a very common interpretation, right? I think a very common line that one hears from the NRA and from other pro-gun groups, that the Second Amendment doesn't have anything to do with hunting or the preservation of sporting rights. It has to do with an additional check and balance, as it were. Yeah,
and that they would somehow, with their rifles and with their guns, could hold off the U.S. Marines or the 101st Airborne, you know.
And so you think do you think that's a misreading of the Second Amendment? Is that what you're saying?
Of course it is. Yes, it's what did the first thing that our forebears did when they came over here in the United States was to set up a government, and they would have you believe that all government is bad. You know, I mean, it's again, you have to pinch yourself when you're discussing some of these things to say, do you really believe that? Do you
critical reflection
believe that? And you know, the zealots do. And when Obama, they said that the biggest gun seller in the United States is President Obama.
Yeah, you can actually find T-shirts with this statement on it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's just, how do you speak? The issue, the dilemma is, how do you speak intelligently to some people who believe that crap? You know?
Do you think it's, from your perspective, do you find that you cannot speak with people like that, or?
Well, it's very hard. The majority of the gun owners that I know are not in that camp.
Okay.
But the people that provide the money and who have the biggest voice on the NRA microphone are people who believe in insurrectionist ideology. There's been this tremendous rise in the number of militia units that have sprung up since Obama took office. You know, I think it's racism. I think it's just idolatry. But you know, it's something that we have to really take note of. Who is this guy? I forget his name, out there in the West, Nevada, who's dared the government to drive his cattle off of our federal lands, you know.
I think it was a BLM dispute.
Yeah, yeah. So the people are very serious about this, but certainly the academic world would not support what they're saying.
their interpretation of the government as a threat to
Yes.
to democracy.
Right.
Wow. Jim, I have really appreciated this conversation. Thank you, for your willingness to talk. Maybe let me just ask one more kind of broad question. I'd just like to hear your reflections on it. We've mostly been talking about some of your work related to reducing gun violence. You've talked a bit about your own history with guns and how you were a hunter, I guess, until last year or very recently. What do guns represent to you? How would you respond to that question? What do guns represent?
Well, to me, I guess I would call a gun a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about a gun which is made to kill people. I'm talking about a sporting weapon, which is a tool, although it can kill people. I saw my hunting rifles and my shotguns as tools, which gave me recreational pleasure. But I also see guns as the most dangerous, the most lethal instrument we have in the country, because they are made to kill people. There's no denying that that's what all handguns and revolvers are for. There's no doubt that that's what an assault weapon is for. And, some of the accessories that go on to that, like your large magazines or a silencer. My goodness, they sell silencers for assault weapons. I mean, what good citizen needs one of those? What good citizen needs a sniper gun that can shoot a mile accurately, and by the Barrett Manufacturing Company, advertises its gun as one that could knock a modern aircraft out of the sky.
You're talking about the Barrett, I think their 50 caliber rifle.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you think? I'm sorry, I have a follow-up question. What do you think about guns as self-defense tools? You refer to them as tools, and in all cases, I think you said yes. These are, they're instruments that can take life, and in many cases they are. Well, maybe in all cases they're designed to take life, whether it's animal life or human life. So, what about guns and self-defense usage?
Well, I think if people, on the one hand, I think if people want to buy a gun for self-defense, I think it is their right to do so according to our laws.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not opposed to people buying a gun for self-defense. However, I would contend that the gun which they buy for self-defense is far more likely to be used in a shooting of one's family or friend or acquaintance, or to be stolen and used in a crime elsewhere than it is to stop an intruder.
So you're saying that maybe the benefits don't outweigh the risks that might come with it.
Absolutely. That they cannot, in one point of the book I say they cannot keep the promises they make to keep us safe and secure. And I just read just the other day of a little child who took their mother's gun out of the handbag at the grocery store and shot her.
Right, this was in Idaho, I think.
Well, yeah. And so, I don't think they're I don't think they're effective in keeping people safe. If people really want to be safe and protect themselves, they need two things. They need a yapping dog, or a can of bear spray, or a can of mace, or red hot chili.
A can of red hot chili.
Yeah, that'll incapacitate someone at 20 yards or 30 yards or so. But I think the idea is there too of somebody who wants to protect themselves has got to realize that if there is some mean somebody out there who wants to kill you, they're going to kill you. They are. Because they're going to come at you when you least expect it. They're going to slip up on you. They're not going to tell you they're around. They're going to be totally hidden from your view. And if you reach for something in your drawer or in your pocket or your holster, you're dead. Because they've got the drop on you. They never come at you and say, let's have a duel and we'll all draw at the count of three. They're just after you and they'll get you if they want. Remember that story I told in the book about the founder of the Me and Mom March. She had a father who was a pharmacist in New Orleans. Okay. And he tried to get people to work at the store and with him, but he had an office, his store in a pretty wild section of town, and he couldn't get people to work with him. So he moved to Metairie, Louisiana, which is a little more upscale neighborhood, and had a store. But he was robbed 3 times there, and he was never robbed in New Orleans. But then somebody said to him, "Why don't you get a gun and protect yourself?" He said, "Man, are you crazy?" He said, I want to live to see the next holdup, and just for that reason that, you can't, total protection is a pipe dream.
Total protection is what you said.
Yeah, total protection, you think.
Yeah, it seems to me that one of the most contentious issues in the gun debate in America has to do with the number of, defensive uses of a handgun. And I think there have been studies on both sides of this and counter arguments and methodological questions raised about, how one actually measures such a thing. But to be sure, it's a very controversial question.
It comes down to a choice. Whose statistics are you going to believe?
That's what I mean, yeah. And I think both sides of this conversation have their heroes, their go-to statistics people, but it becomes a bit of a battlefield.
Yeah, well, let me encourage you to read again the stuff in my book about Kleck, K-L-E-C-K.
Yes.
On his methodologies. And the fact that he says 2 million self-defense cases every year.
This is a gentleman from Florida, I think, right?
Yeah, he's a professor of criminal justice at Florida State University.
That's right. I was actually just reading a couple of his articles.
Yeah. And, of course, I would much rather seeing the fallacies in his methodology. They're not scientific. and they're based on assumptions of what other people have said, and incapable of proof. And Dr. Hemingway, who writes a lot for the New England Journal of Medicine.
He's at Harvard. I think he's a researcher at Harvard.
Yeah. He has destroyed Kleck's arguments, and but who likes them? I mean, the gun dealers love those statistics, and when they want to buy when they want to sell somebody a gun, they just quote Kleck, who's a cotton-picking liar. I mean, and what are they out to do? The only thing they want to do is sell guns. And a good lie will get you a lot of guns. As a kid in a Sunday school class said, what is a lie? He said, it's something that is not true, but is a very present help in time of trouble.
Wow. This is one of your Sunday school kids, huh?
That's right.
Wow. Well, Jim, I have certainly taken up enough of your time, but thank you for your willingness to talk with me.
Well, if you print this or publicize this, let me know. I'd like to take a look at it.
Well, I'd love to do that. The way this project works is that I'm doing interviews with a whole range of people who make explicit connections between gun ownership and religion or faith. And I also travel around the country to different gun-related events, and just look for places where where religion and gun ownership intersect. And I'm basically cataloging that information, and some of it I will publish through a YouTube channel, and in hopes of generating conversation around the topic. By gaining subscribers, and then I'll be able to do some talks at different churches and things like that. But the idea is to gather people around this conversation, and then ultimately, I think, to write a book based on the data that's collected. So
good. Are you familiar with the pictures of Jesus with an assault rifle on?
Oh yes, yeah.
Familiar with all that? Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of different kind of religious inscriptions, that are found on guns as well. I'm sure you're familiar with the controversy that happened with the scope maker, the optics maker Trijicon. You make optics.
I got that in my book.
Yeah.
That's in my book. Yeah.
Is that okay? Maybe I must have forgotten about that. I think they make optics for a number of military branches, and they I think had Bible verses inscribed in their serial.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They put the Bible verse itself, etched it in on the gun. Yeah.
Okay. So all of that falls under the umbrella of this project.
Well, good. Well, blessings on you, Michael, and